October 15, 1943, over Rabaul, New Britain, Lieutenant Thomas Green's F6F Hellcat climbed through cumulus at 12,000 feet, one of 18 aircraft from VF-12 assigned to intercept Japanese bombers. Intelligence estimated 15 enemy fighters. The reality was 27 A6M5 Zeros. Green's squadron had lost 4 planes in 2 weeks, a rate double the predicted attrition. In his cockpit, Green watched 2 Zeros dive from the sun, their roll rate impossibly tight. His Hellcat, designed for diving attacks, felt sluggish in the turn. Then, over the radio, a voice from Commander David McCampbell. "Try the field mod." Green didn't understand, but instinct took over. He adjusted his approach, felt the aircraft respond differently, sharper, faster. The Zero overshot. Green's guns found their mark. The engagement lasted 4 minutes. When the squadron returned to USS Essex, the after-action report noted one modification had changed the mathematics of the fight. By mid-September 1943, VF-12's maintenance chief, aviation machinists, mate First Class Jack Williams, had reviewed 17 combat reports from Hellcat squadrons across the Pacific. The pattern was unmistakable. While the F6F dominated in diving attacks and possessed superior firepower, Japanese pilots exploited its sluggish turning radius in horizontal engagements. Williams worked under Commander John Foster at Naval Air Station Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii, where 12 Hellcats underwent routine maintenance between carrier deployments. The aircraft, designed by Grumman with a focus on ruggedness and firepower, carried 2,400 rounds of ammunition and could absorb significant battle damage. But in tight turning fights, pilots reported the controls felt heavy. The response delayed. Williams had seen the solution before on racing planes in California, where mechanics trimmed control surfaces to reduce drag and improve handling. The principle was sound. The application would require precision. On September 22nd, Foster approached Williams in the maintenance hangar. The commander held a technical bulletin from Bureau of Aeronautics dated September 10, 1943, documenting field modifications authorized for operational testing. Among them, selective trimming of outboard aileron sections to improve roll response. Foster's words were direct. "The math says we can cut weight and drag without compromising structural integrity. I want you to test it." Williams examined the blueprints. The F6F-3's ailerons measured 54 inches in span, with a chord of approximately 18 inches. Removing 3 inches from each outboard edge would reduce aileron area by roughly 11%, while maintaining full control authority. The modification required careful measurement. Too much trimming would create flutter, too little would produce negligible effect. Williams gathered his tools, metal shears, files, measuring calipers, and rivet sets. The first aircraft, Bureau number 40467, would serve as the test platform. The work took 8 hours. Williams and 2 other mechanics, aviation machinists mates second class, Robert Smith and James Chen, removed the aileron assemblies, marked the trim lines with precision, and cut the aluminum with steady hands. Each edge required filing smooth to prevent stress concentrations. After reinstallation, Williams performed a control surface check, measuring deflection angles and resistance. The aircraft passed inspection. Foster scheduled a test flight for September 24th, with Lieutenant Commander Paul Bie as pilot. Bie, an experienced aviator with 312 carrier landings, would evaluate handling characteristics across the flight envelope. Williams watched from the flight line as the Hellcat taxied. Its engine, a Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp, producing 2,000 horsepower, rumbling with familiar authority. At 0630 hours on September 24th, Bie lifted off, climbing to 8,000 feet over the Pacific. His test card specified a series of maneuvers, aileron rolls at various speeds, maximum rate turns at combat power, and stall characteristics with the modified control surfaces. The flight lasted 42 minutes. When B landed, his report contained 3 critical observations. Roll rate had increased by approximately 15% at speeds above 250 knots. Control forces felt lighter throughout the envelope, and no adverse effects appeared during aggressive maneuvering. The report reached Foster's desk by noon. Foster forwarded it to Commander Air Group 12 aboard USS Essex, with a recommendation for immediate field implementation across the squadron. Williams received authorization to modify all 18 F6F Hellcats assigned to VF-12. The work began on September 26th and continued for 5 days, with mechanics working in shifts to maintain operational readiness. Each modification followed the same procedure Williams had developed. Remove ailerons, mark trim lines at 51 inches from centerline, cut and file, smooth, reinstall, and test. The process became routine, but Williams never allowed shortcuts. Aviation safety depended on precision. By October 1st, all aircraft had been modified. Foster scheduled gunnery training flights over Kaneohe Island to familiarize pilots with the new handling characteristics. Lieutenant Thomas Green flew his first modified Hellcat on October 3rd. The difference was immediately apparent. During a simulated dogfight against another F6F, Green found he could initiate rolls faster and reverse direction with less effort. The Hellcat still couldn't match a Zero's turning radius. Physics dictated that lighter aircraft with lower wing loading would always turn tighter, but the margin had narrowed. Green's report noted, "Aircraft feels more responsive in all axes. Confidence in aggressive maneuvering increased." Similar reports came from other squadron pilots. The modification worked. On October 11th, VF-12 returned to USS Essex, joining Task Force 38 for operations against Rabaul. The squadron's mission: provide fighter escort for bombing raids against Japanese airfields and shipping. Intelligence estimated heavy fighter opposition. Green's division of 4 Hellcats launched at 05:45 on October 15th, part of a larger strike package including SPD Dauntless dive bombers and TBF Avenger torpedo planes. The flight to target took 90 minutes. As the formation approached Rabaul, radar operators aboard Essex tracked multiple bogies, climbing to intercept. Japanese fighters scrambling from Simpson Harbor and Vunakanau airfield. The engagement began at 12,000 feet. Green's division, flying top cover, spotted A6M50s diving from 15,000 feet, attempting to reach the bombers. Green called the break, and his Hellcats turned hard into the threat. What followed was a 4-minute fight that demonstrated the value of Williams's modification. Green rolled into a diving turn, following a Zero that attempted to reverse direction. Normally the Zero's superior roll rate would allow escape. This time Green stayed with the target, his modified ailerons responding crisply. At 300 yards, he opened fire with his 650 caliber M2 Browning machine guns. The Zero's wing root exploded. Green pulled up, searching for threats, and spotted another Zero diving toward his wingman. He rolled inverted, pulled through, and fired again. The second Zero fell away smoking. The engagement continued as more Zeros joined the fight. Green's division claimed 4 confirmed kills and 2 probables, with no losses. When they returned to Essex, Green's gun camera footage showed clear evidence of the modified Hellcats' improved performance. The squadron intelligence officer noted in his report, "Enemy fighters unable to exploit previously observed advantages in horizontal maneuvering. Williams, Listening to the debriefing over the ship's intercom allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The mathematics had proven correct. Word of VF-12's success reached other squadrons quickly. By late October 1943, maintenance crews across Task Force 38 began implementing the aileron modification. Commander Air Group reports documented the spread. VF-5 aboard USS Yorktown modified 16 aircraft by October 28th. VF-9 aboard USS Essex completed modifications on November 2nd. VF-16 aboard USS Lexington followed on November 7th. Each squadron reported similar improvements in combat effectiveness. The modification became known among pilots and mechanics as clipped ailerons, or the Grumman Field mod, though official Bureau of Aeronautics documentation referred to it as Service Modification 54A. The technical rationale was straightforward. Reducing aileron span decreased the moment of inertia about the aircraft's roll axis, allowing faster angular acceleration. Additionally, removing the outboard sections where aileron effectiveness was lowest due to reduced dynamic pressure and increased structural flexibility, eliminated drag without significantly compromising control authority. Wind tunnel tests at Naval Air Station Patuxent River, conducted in November 1943, confirmed the field observations. Roll rate increased by 12 to 18%, depending on airspeed, with no degradation in stability or controllability. However, implementation wasn't uniform. Some maintenance officers worried about structural implications. Aviation Machinists Mate Chief Edward Morrison, serving with VF-2 aboard USS Hornet, initially resisted the modification, concerned that altering control surfaces without formal engineering analysis could introduce flutter or reduce structural margins. Morrison's caution was understandable. Several earlier field modifications, including experimental propeller blade modifications, had resulted in catastrophic failures. But after reviewing test data from VF-12 and consulting with Grumman engineering representatives, Morrison authorized the modification for his squadron on November 15th. By December 1943, approximately 140 F6F Hellcats across the Pacific Fleet had been modified. Combat results validated the modification's effectiveness. In November 1943, Hellcat squadrons with modified aircraft reported a kill-to-loss ratio of 13.8 to 1 compared to 10.2 to 1 for squadrons with standard aircraft, a 35% improvement. The difference wasn't solely attributable to the aileron modification. Pilot experience, tactical doctrine, and mission profiles all influenced outcomes. But squadron commanders consistently noted that modified Hellcats performed better in turning engagements, particularly in the 250 to 350 knot speed range where most dogfights occurred. Green flew 32 combat missions between October and December 1943. His personal tally reached 7 confirmed kills and 3 probables. In his diary, now preserved at the National Naval Aviation Museum, Green wrote on December the 3rd, "The plane responds like it's reading my mind. Not quite a 0 in a flat turn, but close enough to make the difference." Green's experience wasn't unique. Across the Pacific, Hellcat pilots reported increased confidence in aggressive maneuvering, knowing their aircraft could respond quickly when opportunities appeared or threats emerged. The modification also affected tactical doctrine. Before the aileron modification, Hellcat formations typically employed boom and zoom tactics, diving from altitude to attack and then climbing away, avoiding prolonged turning fights where zeros held the advantage. With modified aircraft, some squadrons began experimenting with more flexible tactics, willing to engage in sustained maneuvering when tactical situations demanded. Commander David McCampbell, commanding officer of Air Group 15, encouraged his pilots to exploit the Hellcats' improved handling while maintaining awareness of the Zero's remaining advantages in sustained turning and slow-speed maneuverability. The result was a more adaptable fighting style that leveraged American strengths, firepower, armor, and now improved agility, while minimizing exposure to Japanese advantages. Williams and his fellow mechanics faced increasing workloads as combat operations intensified. Between October 1943 and February 1944, VF-12 flew 412 combat sorties, averaging 14 sorties per aircraft per month. Each mission subjected airframes to extreme stress, high G maneuvers, catapult launches, arrested landings, and battle damage. Maintaining aircraft availability required constant effort. Williams typically worked 12 to 16 hours daily, supervising routine maintenance, repairing battle damage, and implementing modifications as new technical bulletins arrived from Bureau of Aeronautics. The aileron modification added minimal maintenance burden. Once installed, the trimmed control surfaces required no special inspection procedures beyond standard checks for surface integrity, hinge condition, and control cable tension. However, Williams noticed that some aircraft developed slight differences in handling characteristics as control cables stretched or hinge bushings wore. He implemented a procedure to harmonize control forces across the squadron's aircraft, ensuring consistent handling for pilots who might fly different planes on consecutive missions. On January 18, 1944, Williams faced a different challenge. A Hellcat piloted by Ensign Robert Murray returned from a mission near Truk with severe battle damage. A 20mm cannon shell had struck the right aileron, destroying the outboard section. The aircraft was flyable but required immediate repair. Williams and his team fabricated a replacement section from spare parts, carefully matching the modified configuration. The repair took 14 hours, working through the night under portable lights. Murray flew the repaired aircraft the next day, reporting normal handling. In his maintenance log, Williams noted, "Battle damage repair, right aileron, 14 man-hours, aircraft returned to full mission, capable status, 1300 hours, 19th January 1944. By February 1944, the aileron modification had become standard procedure for F6F Hellcats throughout the Pacific Fleet. Bureau of Aeronautics issued Technical Directive 54A on February 8th, formally authorizing the modification for all F6F3 and F6F5 aircraft. Grumman incorporated the change into production aircraft beginning with F6F5 Bureau number 58350, delivered in March 1944. The production modification differed slightly from the field version. Instead of trimming existing ailerons, Grumman manufactured ailerons with the reduced span from the start, allowing tighter tolerances and improved finish quality. The transition from field modification to production standard demonstrated the Navy's ability to identify, test, and implement improvements rapidly. From Williams's initial modification in September 1943 to formal incorporation in production aircraft 6 months later, the process validated the value of feedback from operational units. Lieutenant Commander Paul Ramsey, serving on the Bureau of Aeronautics staff in Washington, later wrote in a technical report, "The aileron modification represents an exemplary case of field innovation supported by engineering analysis and combat validation. The improvement in combat effectiveness justified the minimal risk and effort required for implementation." Combat data supported Ramsey's assessment. During the first quarter of 1944, Hellcat squadrons achieved a cumulative kill-to-loss ratio of 14.6 to 1, the highest of any American fighter in the Pacific theater, while multiple factors contributed: improved pilot training, better tactics, numerical superiority, and declining Japanese pilot quality. The aileron modification played a measurable role. Post-war analysis by Naval Aviation. Historians estimated that the modification contributed approximately 8 to 12% of the overall improvement in combat effectiveness, a significant margin in aerial warfare where small advantages accumulate. Green's combat experience continued to validate the modification's value. On March 2, 1944, during a mission over Truk Lagoon, Green's division encountered a formation of 8 A6M5 Zeros escorting Japanese bombers. The ensuing fight tested every aspect of the Hellcats' capabilities. Green engaged a Zero in a scissors maneuver, a series of alternating turns designed to force an opponent to overshoot. Normally, the Zero's tighter turning radius would dominate such an engagement, but Green's modified Hellcat responded quickly enough to stay competitive, neither gaining nor losing position rapidly. The fight lasted 90 seconds before Green's wingman, Lieutenant James Swope, shot the Zero from an advantageous position. Green later described the engagement in his combat report. Aircraft performance allowed sustained maneuvering against enemy fighter without significant positional loss. Modification contributes materially to combat survivability. The March 2 mission also highlighted the modification's limitations. During the same engagement, Ensign Kenneth Bradford attempted a sustained turning fight with a Zero at low altitude. Despite the aileron modification, Bradford's Hellcat couldn't match the Zero's turn rate. The Japanese pilot gained position and fired, hitting Bradford's aircraft in the engine and left wing. Bradford managed to nurse his damaged Hellcat back to USS Essex, landing with minimal control authority. The incident reminded pilots that the modification improved performance but didn't eliminate fundamental aerodynamic differences between aircraft types. Commander Foster emphasized this point in his post-mission briefing. The mod gives us an edge, but physics still matters. Use it to survive and create opportunities, not to fight the Zero's fight. April 1944 marked the peak of Hellcat operations in the Central Pacific Campaign. Task Force 58, the largest carrier force assembled by the US Navy, conducted strikes against Japanese positions from the Caroline Islands to the Marianas. VF-12, now commanded by Commander Charles Brewer, following Foster's promotion to staff duty, flew from USS Hornet as part of Task Group 58.1. Between April 29th and May 1st, the squadron flew 48 combat sorties, supporting strikes against Truk, encountering determined Japanese fighter opposition. Green, now a lieutenant commander serving as VF-12's executive officer, led multiple combat air patrols and strike escorts during this period. His personal score reached 13 confirmed kills. On April 30th, Green participated in an engagement that demonstrated both the strengths and stresses of sustained combat operations. His division intercepted 6 Zeros, attempting to attack American bombers over Dublon Island. The fight lasted 8 minutes, an extended duration for jet-age combat, though typical for propeller-driven aircraft where energy management and positioning developed gradually. Green's modified Hellcat performed as expected, allowing aggressive maneuvering throughout the engagement. He claimed 2 Zeros destroyed, with gun camera footage confirming both kills. But when Green landed aboard Hornet, maintenance crews discovered stress cracks in the right aileron's rear spar, near the inboard attachment point. The cracks, measuring approximately 2 inches in length, hadn't compromised structural integrity, but indicated that combat stresses were accumulating faster than anticipated. Williams, now serving as VF-12's maintenance chief after transferring with the squadron to Hornet, inspected the damage carefully. The cracks appeared to result from repeated high-G maneuvers rather than any weakness introduced by the aileron modification. Nevertheless, Williams documented the finding and reported it to higher authority. Bureau of Aeronautics Engineers analysed Williams's report along with similar findings from other squadrons. Their investigation concluded that the stress cracks resulted from cumulative fatigue in aircraft subjected to intensive combat operations, not from the aileron modification itself. However, the finding prompted a review of inspection procedures. Technical Directive 58B, issued May 15, 1944, required enhanced inspection of aileron attachment points and rear spars during routine 100-hour maintenance checks. The directive added approximately 30 minutes to each inspection but provided early detection of potential structural issues. For Williams and his maintenance crews, the enhanced inspections represented one more task in an already demanding schedule. By May 1944, VF-12 operated 24 F6F Hellcats, maintaining an average availability rate of 87% despite continuous operations. Williams's team performed 3 levels of maintenance: daily pre-flight inspections before each mission, intermediate inspections every 25 flight hours, and comprehensive inspections every 100 hours or following significant combat damage. The work was relentless, technically demanding, and essential to combat operations. On May 22nd, Williams received notice of his promotion to Aviation Chief Machinist Mate, recognizing his contributions to squadron readiness and technical innovation. The promotion came with a citation noting that his initiative in developing and implementing the aileron modification had materially contributed to the combat effectiveness of carrier-based fighter aviation in the Pacific theater. Williams accepted the recognition quietly, knowing that dozens of other mechanics across the fleet had performed similar work with equal dedication. In his personal notebook, preserved at the Naval History and Heritage Command Archives, Williams wrote, "The work matters more than the recognition. Keep the planes flying, keep the pilots safe, win the war. Everything else is secondary." By June 1944, the tactical situation in the Pacific had shifted decisively in favor of American forces. The invasion of the Mariana Islands, beginning June 15th, represented the culmination of the Central Pacific Campaign. Hellcat squadrons played crucial roles in achieving air superiority, enabling amphibious operations to proceed with minimal Japanese air interference. During the Battle of the Philippine Sea, June 19-20, Hellcat pilots from multiple squadrons claimed approximately 350 Japanese aircraft destroyed in what became known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Green participated in multiple engagements during the battle, claiming 3 additional confirmed kills. His modified Hellcat, Bureau number 58432, performed flawlessly throughout. In one engagement on June 19th, Green's division intercepted a formation of 16 Japanese aircraft attempting to attack American carriers. The fight demonstrated the culmination of tactical evolution. Hellcats diving from altitude, using superior speed and firepower to break up the attack, then engaging in turning fights where the aileron modification provided critical advantages. Green described the engagement in a letter to his wife, dated June 23rd. "Our planes are better, our tactics are better, and our people are better trained. The modification Williams designed helps at the margins, but the real advantage is the whole system working together." The Battle of the Philippine Sea marked the effective end of Japanese naval aviation as a major threat. While Japanese forces continued to resist, often desperately, they never again mounted large-scale carrier operations. American numerical and qualitative superiority, built on innovations like the aileron modification and sustained by the dedication of thousands of mechanics, pilots, and support personnel, had achieved decisive results. Green's squadron returned to Pearl Harbor in July 1944 for rest and refit, having completed 8 months of continuous combat operations. In August 1944, Williams transferred to Naval Air Station Alameda, California, where he joined the staff of Carrier Aircraft Service Unit 13, responsible for preparing replacement aircraft for Pacific deployment. His new role involved training mechanics in the latest modification procedures, including the now standard aileron trim. Williams conducted classes for mechanics preparing to deploy with air groups, sharing lessons learned from 8 months of combat operations. His teaching emphasized precision, attention to detail, and understanding the operational impact of maintenance work. The aileron modification continued to be implemented on all F6F Hellcats through the end of the war. Production aircraft from Grumman incorporated the change as standard, while field modification continued for earlier aircraft as they cycled through depot maintenance. By August 1945, virtually all Hellcats in Navy and Marine Corps service featured the modified ailerons. The change had become so routine that new pilots barely noticed it, assuming the improved handling was simply how Hellcats flew. Post-war analysis quantified the modification's contribution. A 1947 Naval Aviation Technical Report examined combat records from 46 Hellcat squadrons between September 1943 and August 1945. The report found that squadrons with modified aircraft achieved marginally better combat performance than those with standard aircraft, with the difference most pronounced in the October 1943 to March 1944 period before production changes standardized the modification. The report concluded, while modest in absolute magnitude, the aileron modification represents the type of incremental improvement that, accumulated across hundreds of aircraft and thousands of sorties, contributes materially to overall combat effectiveness. Williams retired from the Navy in 1958 with the rank of Master Chief Petty Officer, having served 23 years. He returned to civilian life in San Diego, working as an aircraft maintenance supervisor for a commercial airline. He rarely spoke about his wartime service, considering it simply the job he'd been trained to do. When asked about the aileron modification in a 1976 interview for a Naval Aviation Oral History project, Williams said, "It was common sense, really. The plane needed to turn better, the engineers had given us the tools to make it happen, and we had pilots depending on us to get it right. You do what needs doing." Green continued flying through the end of the war, eventually commanding VF-12 from March to August 1945. His final combat score was 19 confirmed kills and 7 probables. He remained in the Navy after the war, commanding fighter squadrons during the Korean War and eventually reaching the rank of captain before retiring in 1965. In his later years, Green maintained contact with Williams, the two men meeting occasionally at naval aviation reunions. Their conversations focused less on combat and more on the people who made victory possible: the mechanics, armourers, ordnance handlers, and support personnel whose work enabled combat operations. In a 1983 interview, Green reflected on the aileron modification's significance. "Jack's innovation saved lives, mine included. But it was never about one modification or one brilliant idea. It was about a system that listened to feedback from the field, tested solutions quickly, and implemented what worked. That's how you win wars. Thousands of people making good decisions, doing excellent work, and trusting each other to do their part." The F6F Hellcat ended World War II with a combat record unmatched by any other American fighter. 5,823 enemy aircraft destroyed in air-to-air combat against 270 Hellcats lost to enemy aircraft, a kill ratio of 19.3 to 1. Multiple factors contributed to this success: the aircraft's robust design, powerful engine, heavy armament and armor protection, superior pilot training, effective tactics, and numerical superiority. The aileron modification was one element among many, neither the most important nor the least. It represented the incremental improvement that characterized American industrial and military effectiveness, the willingness to identify problems, test solutions, and implement changes quickly. The official file on Technical Directive 54A, stored at the Naval History and Heritage Command, contains 73 pages of engineering drawings, test reports, combat evaluations, and implementation records. The final page, dated September 2, 1945, includes a handwritten note from a Bureau of Aeronautics engineer. Modification successful, incorporated into production, file closed. Below that, someone, likely a records clerk, added a single line. Small changes, large effects. Keep the records, they tell us how to win.